Hello, this is High Templar with a new episode of my Total War Warhammer DLC speculations, and today will be the second part of Dark Elves when we will be focusing on the army. And as you might note, my last video was some time ago, however there was this whole The Realm of the Wood Elves DLC that I had to cover in detail, and at the same time I did wanted to wait for a bit because some of my speculations will rely heavily on how the Wood Elves army will actually look like. At the same time, this video is continuation of my Expansion 1 video. So in the Expansion 1 video I explained in detail why we are getting Dark Elves, when we are getting Dark Elves, how we will be getting them, and well, basically everything about it. And in my previous Dark Elf video I've basically covered the campaign for the Dark Elves, their specific traits and when they will be starting, and quite possibly the victory conditions for them. So having said all of that, let's go straight to the Dark Elves army. And the Dark Elves army is quite an interesting one with a huge roster actually, bigger one than say the Wood Elves, and I really hope we will see most of it. However, before the Realm of the Wood Elves I would say no, we wouldn't, and that was something the Creative Assembly did for the Empire, for the Britannia, for Vandercats, for pretty much any faction. However, with the Realm of the Wood Elves they actually covered pretty much everything that there was to cover in the Wood Elves army. So that's why I do believe it will be covered much more closely, and we might even see all the units, and we might see even some of the special abilities which were largely ignored by Creative Assembly so far. So, and I will be basing this video obviously on Warhammer Tabletop, so the units there and the abilities there, and also on my knowledge of Total War series and previous DLC, previous races, how they actually works. So the Dark Elves are army that is also bringing lots of fans. They do love the Dark Elves. I have no idea why, absolutely, but they do have a pretty huge fan base. So let's start with the Dread Spears. Dread Spears is your basic elven spear infantry, and as you might notice, those guys look somewhat similar to the Wood Elves, and they will be looking very similar to the High Elves, except for all the dark and death and everything that. Those guys will most likely be very, very similar to the Eternal Gods in many aspects really. So they will probably cost around 550. They will have those spears that will be armor piercing, and because elves do generally have lots of armor piercing stuff, especially the spears, and those guys will also have pretty low armor, because they are not terrible, but it is low. And considering that the Wood Elves actually got a lot more armor than they should have, I would say the Dark Elves will be extremely similar to the Wood Elves in that case. So Eternal Gods and the Dread Spears will pretty much be the same. 100 models in a unit for the Ultra, 75 for the large, 550 around. Then you have Bleak Swords, and the Bleak Swords is the sword infantry for those guys, and they are very similar actually. They are actually not something you would pick a lot in the tabletop, because spears are just really grindy, they can stand a lot, but swords are more offensive, and in Total War Warhammer and in Total War series in general, the swords beat spears, and this is very important. So those guys will most likely be around 500 to 600, but I would say closer to 500, and they will have 100 men and they will be a low rank infantry for the Elves. And when I say low rank for the Elves, do remember we are talking Elves, so yeah, those guys will be taking out the Empire swords, quite obviously. They will have less health, but their stats will be more impressive, basically. And they actually might have around 40 or 50 armor. I would say more 40, and the shield, yeah. This is the thing. So then we have Black Ark Corsairs. Those guys basically are like a raiding party, the Marines for the Elves, really. And in the tabletop they can be equipped with lots and lots of different weapons, and that includes actually short bows, or the hand bows as they are called. So they would equal to militia if they do. However, I'm not sure if they will, because we never had so much flexibility in Total War series, and especially in the Warhammer, to pick our own weapons as we do in tabletop. So Corsairs might just be your more armored infantry for the Dark Elves. However, that wouldn't really make sense because they already have bleak swords, right? And the bleak swords, so what, get only guy that is armor slightly higher, but those guys don't have shields on the other hand. Well, they possibly can have, but you know. So they will either function as upgraded version of the Free City Militia from the Empire, when they will have non-arm piercing bows that they could be fired from the, you know, rather short range, like 90 or so, and deal some damage. But there will be 100 of those guys, so you know, a bit more damage than your standard, range units. Well, low tier at least, but they will have very low range and they could be like capable fighters. On the other hand, they could go into dual wielding guys who have slightly higher armor. They have, like those guys, 2 weapons and they will have no shields. So that might also be a variety. And they will most likely cost about 600 or a bit more if they actually make it in the game, because they might actually do without Marines at all. But experience with the Wood Elves would tell me that there is a chance of getting those guys actually. Then we have the Witch Elves, and the Witch Elves are, well, scantily clad females who are actually very, very hard hitting, but at the same time has no armor at all. I mean, like, you see it, literally no armor. So the Witch Elves are the core unit in the tabletop. They are basically very similar to, I mean, in the Warhammer I believe they will be very similar to the War Dancers, because, you know, no armor. The War Dancers are actually 15 armor, but those guys could possibly have 0, because, you know, and at the same time they should be rather hard hitting, because there is obviously those guys do usually dual wield. This is actually a hero unit, but those guns actually are dual wielding, and they are very, very dangerous when they get into somebody, but they are very squishy, similarly like War Dancers. So I feel we should expect the similar performance and similar price range, so around 800 gold and around 80 gals in the unit. Without further ado, let's go into something more lit, and this will be Executioners. Executioners should be around the same strength as, say, Chaos Warriors or the Greatswords, or somewhere in between. But they are still Elven units, so 100 of them in Ultra, 75 in the 75 in the large, and those guys are more heavily armored, as could be obviously seen, and quite obviously they do use two-handed weapons. However, it's not the only possibility, but I do believe it will be the only possibility for the total Warhammer. And is there anything to say? I mean, they are elite infantry in any other nation, but you know, they wouldn't be elite in the Chaos. They won't be elite in the Dark Elves, because Elves Chaos usually do have something even more elite, and we will get in those guys. But those guys are very sturdy, very good units that will not cost 1,000. I don't think they would cost 800 or 900, and they will be something to basically to reckon with. They will not be as good as the Black Orcs, or not be as good as the, say, Whitewood Rangers, but they will be close. Then we have, like I said, something even more elite, and those guys are the Blackguards. The Blackguards are basically elite, like, I want to say bodyguards of Malaket, but that wouldn't really be true. And yeah, those guys are actually I mean, tabletop they suck because of the price range. I mean, they are good, but they are also very, very expensive. And in Total Warhammer, I feel they should be competing with units like Chosen. There should be competing against units like Phoenix Guard for the High Elves, which I will cover in the next video. Not very far away from now, but they aren't really as good as those guys. So I guess they could be competing with units as Chosen, although they are not as good as Chosen also, like Whitewood Rangers, something around this area. Obviously the same 100 men and like medium to heavy armor, but nothing fancy. And as you can see, those guys could actually be wielding some kind of halberd weapons. Generally they do. So yeah, that's about it, I believe. That would be very cool if we could have variations for those guys like we do for Chosen, when we can pick like two handlers or the halberds. In the tabletop it's not as clear, because in tabletop, whenever you are picking something big, it will be good against monsters. Whereas in Warhammer, you have to have a distinction, because two-handed swords will not get a bonus versus large, and that's very important. Alright, the last unit is something that nobody likes, and these are Sisters of Slaughters. These are basically upgraded witch elves. And those gals, well, they will be rather hard to, you know, animate, since those weapons are whips, but at the same time we've seen Creative Assembly do pretty amazing things with lately with some of the especially in the realm of the Wood Elves, when I've seen animation for the eagle attacking, or animations for the Spellsinger, that was amazing, and I believe we can get those, but they are not that liked by people, because they are actually a ripoff from Warhammer 40k. I don't like Warhammer 40k, and I know people that do like it, but they don't like that units brought into the Warhammer fantasy, because that doesn't really make sense. However, if they do, they will be not as Rice Spears War Dancers. They will be more like upgraded version of Witch Elves, which are even more hard-hitting and possibly have very little armor. And I don't know what else to say about those. Let's go to something more, well, something more rangy, and those are the Dogshots. The Dogshots are repeated crossbows, and repeated crossbows should tell you something. Those guys are really good. However, they should be also quite expensive, and I would wager a price around 600-700. There will be 80 elves in this unit. They will be rather fast firing. However, you must understand that in the tabletop those guys are dealing armor piercing damage. However, so far in Warhammer, Total War Warhammer, the crossbows were not dealing armor piercing damage. And I don't think they will right now. I think those Dark Elves will just stay at no armor piercing, but being a very good unit that has a very fast rate of fire and can deal a lot of damage. There are two possibilities here. We could have, the unit that is firing repeatedly at the same amount of time, I mean every 9 seconds for example. I mean no, not for those guys, will be probably more like each 5 seconds. And deal pretty nice damage, but not armor piercing. Or we could have volley fire, when they will fire like 5 bolts in the area of 1 second each. And then we will have a period of say 15 seconds for reloading. It is entirely possible. However, I would say it will rather be the first one, and they will be quite expensive and they will be rather nice hitting. Very useful in campaign, probably quite expensive in the multiplayer. Then I will have Shades. Shades are actually very lightly armored, as you can see, skirmisher unit that do use crossbows, as can be seen. And there are two possibilities. We can either get them as the hybrid unit, and then there will be 100 of them, and again pretty much the same as militia. They will be not as good as the Dogshots, but they will be able to hit your enemy with the range attacks quite well. And then there is a second possibility that those guys, because those guys are obviously have some stalking ability, they will most likely have stalk in the Total War Warhammer. They might be actually more elite of a unit, more possibly expensive, more hard hitting, but at the same time there will be less of those guys, like with the Way Watchers, like maybe 45 or something like that. I don't know. Like Deepwood Scouts, for example. I have actually no idea how those guys will be implemented. So in the tabletop, you usually want to have more of those guys, because they are very decent on the flanks if there is like 10 of them. But yeah, oh, never mind. Like I said, I cannot tell you much about this unit. I can tell you it will cost about 800 gold, 6 to 800. But apart from that, I can't say the ranks, the numbers on the stats, not really. Then let's go to cavalry, and starting with the Dark Riders. Dark Riders are very good light cavalry, and there is several reasons for that. Firstly, similarly like the Glade Riders or Illyrians, and I do mean Illyrian actually High Elves, so I shouldn't probably not mention them, because let's just go with the Glade Riders. So those guys are very decent light cavalry that have crossbows. While giving them armor piercing crossbows would be pretty much an overpowering them a lot, I do believe those guys should be stronger than the Glade Riders, and might be even one of the most expensive light cavalries there is, because they do fight better than the Glade Riders, but they are still light cav, so be wary of that. And they do And there is a possibility for those guys to have shields. So crossbow, shields, and some nice armaments for the close combat makes those guys very cool, very powerful unit, although still light cav. So don't match them against Empire Knights. But if you match them against any unit that is weak to cavalry, those guys will break pretty fast. And the Empire Knights might be shot at, but like I said, those guys, if they will have capability of taking crossbows, which I believe they will, they won't be armor piercing, so they still won't be able to skirmish heavy cav as easily as they can in tabletop. Still, they will be very pricey because they are just, well, good really, unless Creative Assembly will totally nerf them. Well, we shall see. Then we have Cold One Knights, and the Cold One Knights is one of my most favorite units. In tabletop they are not as great because they are not that heavy really, but as you can see, those guys do have lances and they do ride dinosaurs, so they are heavy cav for the Dark Elves. And if you know me, you will know that I do like heavy cav, shock cav. I mean, I like any cav really, but I'm really looking forward to test those guys. Obviously slower than other cavs, but should be. Right now some of the heaviest cav have a speed of around 66, and I don't think they will go below 55 with the speed of those guys. Probably they will be around 60 also. So, but 55, 60, somewhere around it. So, those guys in Total War Warhammer will be quite decent and hard-hitting cav, and I'm really looking forward to meet those guys on the actual battlefield. Actually, I'm more looking forward to lead them in the Total War Warhammer, but I'm looking forward to testing those guys really. And they will be in the game. You can be left assured they will be in the game. Then we have not really a cav unit, but we have Cold One Chariots. And you know, they are chariots that are being pulled by some very nice cold ones. So rather hard hitting. However, this would be more of a melee chariot, I believe. That's why it behaves in the tabletop, because they are not as fast as, you know, other chariots basically. Still, since I do love chariots and I do love those dinos, they models looks great, and I believe they will look great in Total War Warhammer. I'm really looking forward to test those guys, especially after latest buff for the chariots that came with update 5 and the removed Wood Elves. Then we have magical cav really. Doomfire Warlocks. Those guys are male practitioners of magic that were scarred. Their souls were scarred by the Malachite, because in Dark Elves you cannot be a male practitioner of magic. Only women can do that, and that's because, well, basically that's because of a prophecy. Malachite now is afraid of the male practitioners of magic pretty much the same way as Kronos was afraid of his children. So yeah, those guys are magical cavalry. They do have some spells they could cast, and I'm not sure how this will be implemented, because one of those spells is actually a magic missile, Chaos Bolt, if my memory serves me well. So I'm not sure really. We will have to see that. Anyhow, whatever you think about the Doomfire Warlocks, I believe they will be very expensive cav that will come in very small size, similarly as the Sister of the Thorn. and they will be most likely support role rather than, actually hitting anyone. And I haven't really seen being used, System of the Thorn, haven't seen being used in multiplayer, so I don't think those guys will also be. We'll have to see, wait and see basically. Then we have monsters, and starting with the Harpies. So Harpies, we already have Harpies with the update 5 and the Beastman getting Harpies. So some slightly different than the tabletop Harpies basically. There is 60 in the unit, they have not much health as one would expect, but they have a very decent melee defense of 40 something, so they don't have that much of a staying power, they don't have that much of a hitting power, but there are flying units and they could possibly be used effectively, and they are not very expensive, there is only 600. So while the Dark Elves Harpies are slightly more effective than the Beastman one, I don't think there will be a difference in Total War or Warhammer. And yeah, you need something flying basically. You can pick those girls up. And let's see what else. Then we have a War Hydra. War Hydra in the tabletop is not a very good unit. I mean, it's very good if you attack the inexperienced player who doesn't know how it works. But how it works is it has, I believe, 3 attacks plus 1 for each head. And for every wound, it loses the attack, which mimics, getting head chopped off. So a good artillery fire can take this monster down from very, very dangerous indeed to almost not really effective. And that's what makes it very, very bad in tabletop. However, I don't think we'll see the same mechanics in Total War Warhammer, because I just think that it would be unfair for a player to have something like that. Although interesting, but yeah, probably not. So, a very powerful, hard-hitting, but not very sturdy monster with not a lot staying power. That's what War Hydra should be. And also, animating the Hydra itself will be pretty hard job on its own without, animating the chopped off heads, or even if there won't be animation, just, making it less effective, like decreasing damage or melee attack or both. Yeah, I don't think that will happen actually. So it might be a very cool unit actually, but not as cool as the next one. This is actually, I'm not sure if I will pronounce this correctly, Charybdis? I know. So it's technically a deep sea monster, although in tabletop doesn't have aquatic role, which is, weird, but never mind. And we didn't see use for any, actually we don't have any river battles like we used to in the Total War Warhammer, so it's not that really important. However, it is more sturdy than the War Hydra. It is still very hard hitting. It has a scaly skin, so probably will have a lot more armor and scaly skin rules, so some missile resistance. So it's very, very cool animal actually. And will be probably, like War Hydra was probably obviously single water unit in the price range of, I'd say, 12 to 1500. This one would be from 1500 to 2000, all the way to 2000 I believe. Because it should be pretty powerful, although I'm not sure, because not as powerful as, say, the Forest Dragon. Yeah, we will have to see. Then we have an interesting support monster. What the hell is support monster, you ask? Well, the Medusa, actually, when you look at it, you start bleeding from everywhere. And this is basically the same thing that the Mortis Engine do. You just get Medusa close to your enemies, and the enemies starts to drain their health and eventually die. And that's something very, very useful indeed, especially that the Medusa, I'm pretty sure, will be lot more cheaper than the Mortis Engine. yeah? So you can put few of those. But if you really want to have a Dark Elf Mortin engine, you can have it. So this is a shrine for the Medusa. This is basically a Mortis engine again. As you can see, the design is actually similar, and there is a mirror behind the Medusa just to, you know, amplify the effect that she has. But at the same time, it will probably be pretty expensive, and probably it will be a huge, basically a huge bullseye that will be on that unit, because the same as with Mortis engine. Have you seen Mortis engine survive more than a few minutes in a fight, especially when the artillery is there? Probably not. So this will probably be very bad for multiplayer, but might be very cool for the campaign. Then we have a proper artillery, and starting with the Reaper bolt thrower, which is a repeating crossbow, a repeating bolt thrower really. And that makes me think there are two ways of doing this. Firstly, it will be standard for units, and it will be just, you know, pretty expensive, because it's like dwarf bolt thrower, but it fires a lot faster, and the bolt thrower already fires quite fast. Not that much damage, but with fast enough rate of fire, it will be very effective artillery piece, especially against flyers, monsters and such. And it does armor piercing damage also, so yeah. That looks pretty damaging. And the same, it will be possible to have it in the just fast rate of fire variant, or maybe a volley fire and then you have to reload. That's a possibility, but I think Creative Assembly will actually go with the first one, so it will be just quite fast firing, like maybe each 5 seconds or so, I don't know. But then this unit will have to be quite expensive. The other version is that will be only a single thrower, so it will be very fast firing, it will do a lot of damage, but at the same time it will be very vulnerable to, you know, anything, and at the same time cheaper, a lot cheaper, in the area of 600, where the previous idea was probably in the area of 1000. That's how much of a difference that would make. I mean, those are actually, you know, I'm not sure if that prices will be actually like that. The Creative Assembly might make it less range or less actually hitting power, and then it will make it cheaper, or more and it will be more expensive. I don't know. But this is the two situations that I can really see this piece of artillery being used in Total War Warhammer. And then we have something even more interesting, and this is Scourge Runner Chariot. And while this is pulled by two Dark Steeds, it is in effect a bolt thrower on a chariot. So, very interesting piece of artillery. Most likely being able to fire on the run, and in the tabletop it actually has a harpoon in it, which can pull anything up to, you know, giants, which is stupid, but anyway, it's possible. And I don't think the harpoon will be actually implemented here, because it doesn't really make sense. But having a mobile artillery piece that is at the same time a chariot, and it is a chariot with some, you know, sights coming out of the wheels, might be pretty cool idea, and I might have some fun micromanaging it, although it will need a lot of micromanagement, quite obviously. Then we have actually your heroes, and we will start with the Master. Master is your standard rank and file melee hero. Nothing more to say about him. really. I mean, we don't actually see this type of hero in the Wood Elves, which is strange because those guys told us that give every unit from the Wood Elf roster, but the Glade Captain is there, and it's not in the Total Warhammer. So this is your standard melee hero, and it will behave pretty much the same way as Emperor Captain or Paladin or the Exalted Hero. Not much to say about him, although he will be less armored than, say, Exalted Hero. Probably still around 100 armor, really, because so far the Creative Assembly do ignore that armor stuff to make a good balance, and I do understand that. So yeah. Then we have your standard caster, and this is Sorceress. And Sorceress from the Dark Elves do have a bonus to use versus Dark Magic, which we will most likely get. And that's very cool. In the tabletop they could be using different lords of magic. I'm not sure how many will be used in the Total Warhammer, but we will probably have a few types of sorcerers to pick on, including Dark Magic one. And the Dark Elves has actually bonus dice for Dark Magic, so I don't think that will be implemented in Total Warhammer. No, I don't think. I think they will be pretty much the same casters as everyone else. So that was the Sorceress, and then we have a Death Hag, which you've seen already before, and this is upgraded version of the Witch Elves. This is a hero level Witch Elf, so it is pretty damaging and pretty light armored and pretty, I want to say, like anti-infantry. Yeah, there is no good example, really. I mean, we see Dragon Slayers, but there was no, Demon Slayer hero unit. So, I don't know. I really don't know. But while there is no real equivalent, she will be a hard-hitting melee specialist with lighter armor that will be vulnerable to, missile fire, but will take out enemy units quite fast and quite possibly buff other units also, because she does that. And finally we have Assassin. Assassins are very cool. They will have obviously Stalk, and they do have obviously low armor, and in tabletop you can hide them in a unit, but in Total Warhammer obviously that won't be possible. They would have just Stalk, and they will probably pretty good at sneaking up to your lords and taking them down fast. Whether we will get them, I'm not sure. Obviously on the map assassins should be pretty good at, assassinating. I do expect they will have like at least 15% bonus for assassinating on the campaign map. That would something be very handy for, assassins. Then we have General, starting with the Dread Lord. Your Stample General for the Dark Elves is heavily clad in armor and has multiple as heroes. Also heroes do have many mount options, but this guy also have many mount options. So we have Darksteed, the Cold One, which is, very, very cool indeed. The Dark Pegasus, which is extremely cool, but also the Manticore, and finally Black Dragon, which obviously won't be available to heroes. So yeah, I'm looking forward to using those guys. And obviously, I did get to show you this guy on the actual Black Dragon because they are so cool. Black Dragons, fun fact, slightly more powerful than Forest Dragons, less powerful than some of the higher dragons, which is, going a lot over the board with the power of Star Dragons, for example. Then we have Supreme Sorceress, which is obviously a Lord level unit for the Sorceress, and we might not get them in the Total War because there are other cool options, and we didn't get them for the Wolves, and I don't think. Yeah, we might get them, but I'm not so sure. I'm keeping my hopes up, but I'm not convinced we will get those guys. But obviously, a Lord level caster is something you want to have, especially if some Lords of Magic will be very powerful and you won't be able to recruit as many agents in the campaign as you would like to at the beginning. Then we have High Beastmaster, which is a strange Lord. I mean, it's very expensive in tabletop and not really worth it. It does give some bonus attacks for the monsters, and I'm really not sure how it will work in the Total War. You might have it as a buffing Lord, like we have with, Archlector and such. We have lots of buffing Lords, and he will be more effective obviously than in tabletop, because he has to be. They have to be balanced. Yeah, so. And finally we have Black Ark Captain. So, Fleetmaster, sorry. Black Ark Fleetmaster. So this guy is commander of the Black Ark, and he has a sword for a leg. So, yeah. I mean, he's also more expensive. He's very cool, but he's also more expensive than the Dread Lord, and you would normally not pick it in tabletop. And I'm not sure we will get him in the Total War Warhammer. I'm pretty sure we won't. That is an option. Probably we could possibly have him as the leader of an actual fleet. It's possible. We'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see. Because we probably will have fleets in the expansion one. And then let's go to Legendary Lords and start with the Malekith himself, who, the Witch King, one of the most powerful entities in the Warhammer universe, really. He's not Karl Franz, for sure. He's an elf lord that has thousands of years on his own, and he's a very powerful sorcerer. And I would really like to see him. He will probably have a melee tree and the dark magic tree, and obviously your unit buffing tree and the campaign tree, the blue one. So he will be a faction leader, and he's very, very cool. And then we go with Marussia. Marussia is actually, or I might be pronouncing it very, very wrong, and it's Morathia or something like that, but she is actually Malekith's mother, who was kind of hooked up with some Slaanesh cult at the beginning, but you've seen how the Dark Elf armors look like, right? And the models for her looks really, really bad on the ones I found, because she's actually a Dark Elf sorceress and such, and if you look at the art done for her, she is rather, more appealing than the models, if you know what I mean. But yeah, obviously looking forward to see her in the fight. The other options for the second Lord, I mean, I'm not sure how many Legendary Lords we will get with the Dark Elves. I'm hoping for 3. And the Crane Helbron is one of the... Kronos, obviously. Helbron is one of the options. She's a legendary level witch elf. So, yeah, she's really, really badass, as can be seen here. And something of interesting Lord, because she wouldn't have much armor, but she would be a melee lord, and you would have to micromanage her very carefully. But if you do this well, you might get a lot of gains from it, and that might be something very cool. Although legendary lords, if you do lose her in the battle, it won't be that big of a deal, because you know she will be back in 4 turns or so, because she would be legendary lord. Either way, I would like to see her. I don't know if we will, but I would like to have more than 2 legendary lords for the Dark Elves, and the Margate and the Marussia is actually pretty sure bets, so we'll have to see. The other option is Malus Darkblade, who is also a very cool legendary lord. He is mentioned a lot in the lore, he has his own books, so we might see him. But from the Warhammer perspective, Total War Warhammer perspective, he is kinda your, legendary melee lord, like Carl Franz, nothing special about him. Or we might get something slightly cooler, although I know I can see that I don't have a slide for him. But there is also Shadowblade, who is actually an assassin for the legendary level assassin, but I don't actually, that was last minute addition, I'm not sure why it's not in the slide, but either way, I don't think we'll have assassin kind of legendary lord, so I added him kind of at the end. Not sure if we'll get him, probably not. And that is pretty much it. I know it was a long video, but if you know my speculation videos, you probably expected it will be taking some time. And this roster was pretty big. So this is it, I hope you like it. If you did, press like, comment if you will, and see my other videos. I do mechanics videos and DLC analysis, speculation videos for Total War, but I also do Let's Plays in Total War series and other games. Thank you for watching, and see you later.